The drifting starship floated in the silent blackness of space, its battered hull marked by long scars and deep dents. No lights flickered along its length except a single weak beam from the main corridor. Inside the cold metal shell, the life. Support systems groaned under strain, threatening to die at any moment on the narrow bridge. An alien mother pressed her small child close to her chest, her skin a pale green that glimmered under the dim light. She rocked gently to calm the child's shivers. Each breath came in short, ragged gasps. Her eyes scanned the dark window for any sign of rescue. Far above, a human scout ship drifted into scanner range. Its long sensors picked up the faint energy signature of the refugee vessel. Captain Reyes peered at the readings and frowned. He ordered his crew to hold position and analyze the signal before any action. They could not risk harming innocents. Below deck, corridors ran with hissing air and failing lights. The mother struggled to open a ration pack. Her hands shook from exhaustion. She fed her child small cubes of synthetic food. The child's slender fingers closed around the offering. And for a moment, the child smiled through feverish eyes. The ship's emergency beacon pulsed on and off, sending a looped distress call in a broken dialect. "Help us, please help us." The simple words echoed through empty space. The beacon's power waned with every cycle, and time slipped away from the refugees on the human ship's bridge. The communications officer worked swiftly to decode the alien plea. Her fingers danced across the console. At last, a broken English translation appeared on the screen. "We fled our mate. Please let us in." The crew exchanged worried glances as they heard the mother's sorrow. Captain Reyes eased his hand off the console and gave the quiet order, "Open a secure channel." Static crackled until the mother's trembling voice filled the room. "I fled my mate. Please let me in." Her words carried a deep sorrow that touched even hardened soldiers. A young ensign asked if the ship might be a trap. Sensors showed no weapons array or hostile cargo, only life signs drifting near death. The medical bay was readied for a fast rescue. Engineers patched a jagged hole in the hull with urgent precision. The human crew braced for boarding. A small shuttle detached and glided toward the refugee ship. Its engines hummed softly. Marines stood ready with scanners and first aid kits. Each held their breath at the airlock's hiss, hearts pounding at the unknown. When the hatch slid open, cold air rushed in. Elevator bright lights revealed a narrow hallway lit by flickering panels. At the far end stood the mother, her small form trembling in the doorway. She held out her child and waited without fear. The Marines advanced with caution, scanners sweeping every angle. Officer Patel knelt beside the mother and offered her hand. The mother stared for a heartbeat, then released the child into the medic's arms. Tears rolled down her cheeks in the medical bay. The child lay on a soft stretcher. Monitors beeped as they tracked vital signs. A high fever spiked and ebbed. Dr. Lin worked quickly to start an IV line. The mother stood in the doorway, her body tight with worry. Captain Reyes watched through a reinforced window, his chest tightening with each monitor beep. He was no stranger to war, but he had never seen such raw hope and fear mixed in one plea. He nodded to his crew. They would do everything they could to save them as power surged back through the refugee ship's circuits. Lights flickered on and consoles booted up. The engines hummed with a weak but steady pulse. The mother stepped behind the captain and bowed her head in silent thanks. In the quiet, linking moment, the two vessels floated side by side, one broken and desperate, the other strong and cautious. A fragile thread of mercy stretched between them. Distant stars watched in silent witness below decks. The flickering corridors led to rooms once filled with life, now silent except for the echo of distant alarms. A shelf held tattered holobooks with faded covers. One depicted a towering crystal forest under violet skies, Engineer Song brushed off the dust and traced the image with her finger. Captain Reyes pressed the translation pad to the mother and spoke a single word. Home. She touched the device and said the word back in perfect clarity, as if it had lived in her heart despite all the pain. A trembling smile crossed her face, and she turned to point at a vent leading to the ship's lower levels. The captain signaled for a security team to follow. They slid open the rusted vent cover and peered into darkness. The lower deck lay in shadow, broken equipment scattered like ghostly relics. The air was thick with stale dust and the hum of dying systems. A soft beeping came from a hidden console that blinked for power. The team set to work, restoring the lights back on the human warship. The crew monitored nearby traffic for another distress call. The nebula beyond glowed in violet light. Its beauty was cold and distant, reminding them why they fought to protect life against the void. In the bay, the mother sat on a low bench and hummed a lullaby. The tune was old and gentle, passed down by her ancestors. The medic recorded each note, hoping to learn of her people's hope. On the bridge, the communications officer added the lullaby to the translation database. The soft melody filled the room, calming every anxious mind. Captain Reyes gazed out a viewport at an asteroid belt spinning slowly around a tiny sun. He felt a pang of longing for his homeworld and the family he left behind. He wondered if children there still ran free under open skies. Suddenly, an alarm rang out as the long-range scanners picked up dozens of fast-moving contacts. Red strobes lit the bridge. The crew sprang to battle stations. The captain's voice cut through the chaos. Shields up, weapons ready. The crew obeyed in a blur. The mother's voice echoed over the channel. They come. They come. Her fear was real and urgent. Captain Reyes looked at her pale face on a small monitor and vowed, "We protect them at all cost." The crew braced as the warship powered to full readiness. Engines roaring beneath their feet. The two ships formed a single shielded unit against the unknown force gathering beyond the void. Every heart on both vessels beat in silent prayer for the test to come. Hope and mercy held firm against the darkness. The real battle was about to begin. On the bridge of the warship Meridian, Captain Reyes stared at the flickering screen that showed the faint energy signature of the refugee ship's failing systems. Engineers called out that the hull breach had been patched but was still unstable. Life support readouts ticked downward as oxygen levels dwindled. The captain felt a knot tighten in his chest at the thought of those two lives slipping away. He inhaled deeply and tapped his fingers on the console to steady himself. Around him, the crew moved with quiet urgency and shared tension. Lieutenant Chen reported that sensors detected no weapons or hidden cargo, only the two life signs already known. Captain Reyes nodded and issued his first order. Hold position and open a secure comms channel. Moments later, the communications officer cracked open the frequency and static gave way to the mother's trembling voice. "Please, let me in," she repeated in broken basic, her words soaked in fear and exhaustion. The simple plea echoed through the Meridian speakers. Dr. Lin, watching from a nearby station, whispered that the child's vitals would not last long. Without help, Commander Patel frowned and warned that enemy forces might use the same tactic to draw the warship into a trap. Pilot Sodaig reminded them that the odds of ambush were low compared to the certainty of saving innocent lives. Debate rippled through the bridge like a cold wind. Captain Reyes raised a hand to calm them and said, "We act with caution, but we act swiftly. Prepare the shuttle." In the ready bay, medical teams donned biosuits and checked their gear. Medics loaded portable life support packs and emergency rations into their kits. Engineers brought out remote repair drones to seal any extra breaches on the refugee hull. Weapons officers calibrated non-lethal repulsor nets in case of sudden threat. Every member of the boarding party worked with solemn focus. each knew the weight of hope resting on their shoulders. Captain Reyes watched from an observation port and silently reminded himself that mercy was their highest command. He pressed a small button on his console and spoke into the channel. Shuttle Hope, launch and proceed to the drift vector. The Shuttle Hope separated with a soft hum and slid away from the Meridian's belly. Its engines glowed with pale blue light against the deep black of space. Captain Reyes switched the main view to the Hope's camera feed, where the battered refugee ship drifted silently. The camera shook slightly as the shuttle maneuvered to align its docking arms. Inside the shuttle, Marine Sergeant Alvarez checked her scanner and nodded. "No threat signatures yet," she reported. Medic Soto secured the child's vitals monitor and whispered words of comfort. Pilot Sodag guided the shuttle closer. The distance closed meter by meter. Tension built in every heart on both ships. The Meridian's crew watched breathlessly. As the shuttle drew near on the Meridian's bridge, Lieutenant Chen monitored the shuttle's approach and fed data to the docking computer. Convergence speed was slow and safe, but unknown variables like hidden rifts or rogue debris could still cause disaster. Captain Reyes leaned forward, jaw set, and murmured, "Hold steady." The crew obeyed him without question. A message flashed on the console. Docking clamps engaged. And a soft series of thumps confirmed a secure connection. Breathable air rushed through the sealing valves, too. Pressurized the corridor between the ships, lights came on in the docking ring, revealing the scarred entrance of the refugee vessel back in the shuttle. Alvarez unclipped her harness and checked each team member's gear once more. "Stay sharp," she said in a low voice. "We go in to help, not to harm." The medics nodded, their faces set with determination. The child coughed softly and glanced at the open hatch, eyes wide but hopeful. Soto handed the little one a warm blanket as the mother stood just inside the refugee door, her pale green skin marked with grime and tears. She placed a gentle hand on the hatch frame and whispered thanks as the two ships held together, a fragile link of mercy in the void. On the Meridian's bridge, Captain Reyes sent a final command. "Stand by for report from Hope, the communications." Officer prepared to relay anything from the boarding team. The entire crew waited in silent vigil. The only sound was the hum of the ship's engines and the distant beeping of life support monitors. Outside the viewports, the nebula glowed with violet light, casting ethereal patterns across the ship's hulls. It felt like the universe itself was watching, waiting to see if kindness could hold against the darkness in the docking chamber. The boarding party moved into the refugee ship without hesitation. Sensors swept every corner. Instruments scanned the hallways for toxins and radiation. Alvarez waved the team forward. "Medic first," she said softly. Soto knelt by the mother and checked her vitals. The mother's strength faded with each shaky breath, but hope lit her eyes when she saw the medics. "Thank you," she whispered in broken basic. "You saved my child." The child reached out a small hand toward Soto and clung to her. The medic offered a comforting smile as she activated the life support pack. Warm oxygen flowed into the child's mask, easing the fever on the Meridian. Captain Reyes listened to each word relayed through the comms link. He felt relief begin to wash over him, but held steady. There was still risk until the team returned. His mind flicked back to his own daughter on Earth, asleep in her bunk right now. He thought of her laughter and imagined the same joy returning to this child's face. He straightened in his chair and told his crew, "Keep shields at ready and maintain station." They nodded and carried on, grateful for the chance to do good. The Shuttle Hope's hatch closed behind the team and sealed itself with a hiss. Air whooshed back into the Meridian as the docking clamps disengaged. The shuttle shifted gently away to make room. Captain Reyes watched both ships slip into relative safety. His crew erupted in quiet applause. They had done the right thing. The refugee ship's systems began to hum with restored power. Lights flickered on inside its hull, and hope glowed where there was once only despair. The captain allowed himself a small smile as he spoke to the silent stars. May we always answer the call, first contact. Broken words, the Meridian's conference room was quiet and bright, banks of screens lining the walls. Captain Reyes stood beside Lieutenant Chen, who held the alien translator device in her hands. The mother sat at the center table, her child resting on a padded chair beside her. Translator units hummed softly as they worked to connect the strange alien speech to basic. The mother's voice trembled as she began again. We fled. Her words came in short bursts. The translator spat out broken English. We escaped danger. Home lost. The crew leaned forward. Every face held concern and curiosity. Lieutenant Chen adjusted the device's filters. Sparks of static crackled, then cleared. The next phrase came through more smoothly. My mate, he fell. The mother's eyes welled with tears. She bowed her head, and the child reached up to touch her cheek. Dr. Lin opened a datapad and typed quickly. They say their world was attacked, she announced. Their people fell in a sudden war. They alone survived. Captain Reyes nodded. He turned to Commander Patel. We need more details. Patel tapped a console and asked in calm basic, Who attacked you? The translator repeated the question in the mother's tongue. She closed her eyes, struggling for words. After a long pause, she answered, Dark Fleet, came fast. The device translated, Unknown ships. Destroyed. Home. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Behind them, the viewport showed the refugee ship tethered to the Meridian. Its hull still bore the fresh scars of battle. Outside, distant warships drifted near the nebula's edge. Their shapes were dark, like shadows in the violet haze. The mother shivered. Lieutenant Chen brought up a holomap of the system. These are the contacts we spotted, she said, pointing to red blips. They move like hunters. The mother leaned forward. She pointed at one blip closest to the nebula's core. The translator responded. They chase survivors. Dr. Lin swiped the pad and added a note. Possible pursuers of refugees. The captain stood silent for a moment. Then he spoke to the mother. You speak of more survivors. The translator crackled and gave her words. Others alive. Hiding, the child stirred and looked at the screens. He was curious about the red lights outside. Medic Soto knelt beside him and offered a small toy from her med pack. The boy accepted it, his small fingers closing around the smooth plastic. His eyes sparkled with new hope. Captain Reyes addressed his crew. We must warn them, he said. If more refugees hide in those nebula vents, we should help them too. The mother's voice broke as she listened. She whispered, Thank you. The translator relayed her gratitude plainly. Lieutenant Chen frowned at the console. Shields and sensors can't reach deep into the nebula clouds, she warned. The gas will block our scans. Commander Patel tapped a finger on the map. We could send cloaked drones. He offered the idea slowly. The captain nodded once. Outside on the docking ring, Engineer Song prepared a swarm of micro-drones. Each one was small and round, with soft white lights that would not betray them. They slotted into a launch tube on the ship's hull. The crew watched via remote feed as the tube door hissed open. Back in the conference room, Captain Reyes gave the order. Launch them now. A moment later, on the main view screen, tiny lights scattered toward the nebula. They flashed once, then disappeared into the violet mist. All hands held their breath. The translator continued its work. The mother described her people's customs. We share life. No waste. Chen recorded every phrase. The more the crew learned, the more they felt the refugees' pain and their strength. Patel asked another question. What is your name? The mother looked at her child, then whispered softly. The translator clicked and printed in clear basic, "I am called Mara." The child's small voice piped up in unsteady basic, "I am Jun." The room brightened with warm relief. Suddenly, the main screen blinked red. Lieutenant Chen gasped. Incoming data from drones. She tapped rapidly. The view screen showed shadowed shapes moving inside the nebula, hundreds of tiny life signs, clustered in hollow caverns of gas. Some signals were weak, some were strong. The captain's voice was calm but firm. "We found them," he announced. "They wait for rescue." Marat covered her mouth in silent awe. The translator gave her gasp, "You see." Jun ran to his mother's side and laid his head on her shoulder. Dr. Lin tapped her datapad. "Some refugees are too weak to move," she warned. "We must act fast." The captain turned to his officers. "Plan a rescue route." He stood tall. "No one is left behind." Marat's tears fell as she watched the hollow projection of her scattered people. Her broken words came slowly. "I must save them." The translator repeated her vow. The crew felt her pain and her courage. As the room filled with the hummed chatter of commands and translations, the bond between humans and refugees deepened. Each broken word built a bridge of trust. Each glance showed hope. And through the silent nebula beyond the hull, more lives waited for that same mercy and compassion, ready to find safety in the hands of strangers who spoke in broken words, but understood the language of kindness. Shadows on the horizon, the Meridian's hull trembled gently as its engines hummed at ready power. Lights reflecting off the nearby nebula's violet haze. Captain Reyes paced the bridge, eyes fixed on the scanner display, where new contacts appeared slowly, red blips drifting into view, each one moving faster than the last. Tension built like tight wire about to snap. Lieutenant Chen pointed at the screen. "Multiple signatures, closing fast," she said, voice low. The bridge fell silent, save for the hum of computers. Commander Patel leaned in, reading the distances. They approach in formation. Too far to identify yet. The mother Marat watched from a secure viewing station, her green skin pale under the bridge lights, fear in her eyes. Outside, the nebula's gas swirled around the warped shapes of other vessels. Their hulls were dark silhouettes against the glowing clouds. The crew felt the weight of unknown intent pressing on them. Were these ships chasing Marat or hunting the Meridian herself? The question hung heavy in every mind. Captain Reyes cleared his throat. "Shields too full. Tactical team, prepare for possible engagement." Weapons officers snapped to alert, fingers flying over controls. Non-lethal options were ready, first repulsor nets and stun beams, just in case these ships carried refugees like Marat. But lethal weapons stood by if needed. The bridge lights dimmed slightly as shields powered up. In the docking bay, Engineer Song peered at the transparent window, watching the distant shapes. She tapped the glass, sending a silent message of warning. Behind her, Marines checked their gear, battery packs, and scanners at the ready. The bay's lights cast long shadows across the floor, echoing the names of upcoming battles. Back on the bridge, sensors struggled to cut through the blurred nebula clouds. Lieutenant Chen toggled filters, but static and gas particles swarmed the readouts. "I can't get a clear image. The gas blocks our view." The screen flickered with bursts of interference. Commander Patel suggested, "Send a probe drone." "Closer. Keep it small and fast." Captain Reyes nodded. "Launch drone Echo." The officer tapped a control pad. A small sphere slid from a launch tube, its lights dim to avoid detection. It darted into the violet mist, sensors pinging and beaming data back. Each pulse painted a rough outline of the looming vessels. On the main screen, the drone's feed showed bulkier hulls than the refugee ship military-grade warships. their gun ports visible. The shapes were unfamiliar. Their paint was dark gray, streaked with the nebula's violet glow. No flags or markings could be seen. The crew held their breath at the sight of unfamiliar weapons arrays. Marat watched too, her child Jun clinging to her leg. "They bring war," she whispered. The translator echoed, "They bring battle." Mara's voice trembled as she added, "They hunt my kind." The bridge crew exchanged looks of sympathy and shock. The mother's people fought to survive, and now the hunters were near. Captain Reyes spoke softly into the com. "Marat, stay clear of the bridge. We will protect you." The mother bowed her head and led Jun away without protest. The protective barrier hissed closed behind them, sealing them in a secure room. The crew felt the urgency to defend both refugees and ship. Commander Patel leaned over the tactical console. "Shall we hail them? Try to warn them off." He tapped a key. Communication channels opened on a wide band. Static filled the air. For a moment before echoing a broken voice, "Stay back or face destruction." The cold words cut through the bridge. Captain Reyes frowned. "They attack if we approach?" he asked. The tactical officer shook his head. They did not specify target. Could be us or Marat's ship. The captain pressed his palms on the rail, prepared to fire warning shots. The weapons officer keyed in coordinates. Moments later, the Meridian's forward cannons flared with non-lethal electric bolts. The beams arced through space and struck the nearest vessel's hull. It rocked but did not return fire. A beat of silence passed, broken by the faint sound of metal rippling under stress. Another warning shot landed. Their shields held firm as the unknown ship slowed. Distant voices crackled over open channels, mixing growls in an alien tongue. Translator filters worked furiously. The words came through. "Refugees are ours." The message was clear. These warships claimed Marat's people as their prey. Captain Reyes set his jaw. "They refuse mercy." He met Marat's fearful gaze on the secure feed. "You are safe with us. We'll not let them take you." The mother nodded, tears in her eyes, gripping her child's trembling hand. The bridge tactical lights pulsed red as the unknown ships edged closer. Shields crackled under the nebula's charged particles. Every crew member braced for the attack. The Meridian's engines roared as it nudged forward, positioning itself between the hunters and the refugee vessel. Captain Reyes raised his voice. "All hands, prepare to defend the innocent. We stand between the darkness and hope. Hold steady and stay sharp." The crew responded with a unified nod. Outside, the warships cast long shadows across the violet mist. The horizon trembled with unseen force, and the real battle for mercy was about to begin. A desperate gamble, the Meridian's bridge pulsed with tension as crew members worked to reroute power. Captain Reyes stood at the center and held up a closed fist to gather silence. In the soft glow of the holoscreens, he outlined his desperate plan. The enemy ships had slowed their advance, but remained close. Now was the time to conceal the refugee ship's signature under ghost shields. No one spoke. Everyone watched him with hope and fear mingled in their eyes. Lieutenant Chen tapped and dragged power from the Meridian's warp drive into the auxiliary. System engineers in the tech bay saw their console lights flicker as they worked fast. They secured each conduit with care and tightened every bolt under hissing vents. The ghost shields wrapped the alien vessel in a faint shimmer. The sensors showed a sharp drop in the ship's energy signature. Hope rose like warm sunlight in the crew's hearts in the docking bay. Engineer Song leaned over her station and watched shifting readings with focused eyes. She saw the shield dome expand around the refugee ship. Its lights dimmed until only a whisper showed on long-range scanners. She tapped a small button to confirm the drop in hull visibility. Technicians nodded and cheered quietly at the success. Even the hum of the ventilation felt like a song of relief. Commander Patel hovered at the tactical console and marked each unknown contact on a transparent display. Their red blips drifted in strange patterns among the violet gases. He plotted a safe intercept course, but held his hand over the launch keys. Warship rules said to avoid traps, but these hunters must be stopped. He turned to Captain Reyes and asked softly if he should fire warning shots. The captain gave a steady nod. Down in the armory, Marines loaded repulsor nets and stun rounds into their guns. Each soldier checked the safety catch and ran a final system test. Their faces were tense, yet determined. Each knew they stood as shields for the helpless. Sergeant Alvarez barked orders to line up near the bay entrance. The team took deep breaths and accepted the weight of their duty on the bridge. Captain Reyes raised his hand and spoke in a clear voice that echoed in every station. "Fire warning shots now," he said. The first beam of energy leaped from the Meridian's bows. It struck the closest warship's hull with a shock of blue light. The hull rippled under the impact. Each crew member in the tactical bay let out a small breath. The warning beams formed arcs of bright electricity against the nebula's mist. Oh! They crackled like thunderclaps in the silent void. The enemy ship shuddered, and its shields flared bright. But it held its course. A harsh message returned in broken basic: "Yield now or die." The words rang cold and final. On the bridge, the crew stood firm. Back in the medical bay, Dr. Lin watched the monitors tracking Chen's life signs. The child's fever had spiked dangerously again. Marat stood at the foot of the cot and brushed her son's hair back from his forehead. Her green hand shook as she whispered words of comfort. Manek Soto held Marat's gaze and said softly that they would save the child. Hope and fear battled in their hearts. On the bridge, alarms rang as the enemy ships changed formation. Chen called out that they were regrouping for a heavy strike. Patel ordered shields to maximum and readied the auxiliary systems. The hum of the engines grew louder under full power. Every officer steadied themselves for the moment ahead. Captain Reyes clenched his fists and spoke with firm resolve. "This is our only chance," he said. "We draw them close and jump out with the refugees." His plan was daring and risky, but mercy demanded bold action. He reached for the large green activate button on the console. In the tactical bay, officers loaded the jump coordinates into the nav computer. A narrow corridor of safe passage glowed on the holomap. It wound between drifting asteroids and the edge of the nebula. The margin for error was razor thin. One wrong move, and both ships would vanish in gas and rock. Every officer's hand trembled as they held the final key. Then they braced for the command. Captain Reyes pressed the initiate button and the meridians. Hull thrummed with energy, the jump drives engaged with a low roar, and lights flickered across every panel. The ghost shields pulsed one last time to shield the vessels from the hunter's line of fire. The refugee ship's signature flickered back to life with each pulse. Then both vessels blinked out of the nebula into clear space. Alarms rang as new coordinates updated on every console. The desperate gamble had paid off. The siege of Mercy the Meridian and the refugee ship reappeared on the far side of the nebula. Just outside a small star cluster, space felt calm, but their danger was not over. Captain Reyes watched the main view screen as the ghost shields flickered. The child's sickness still weighed heavily on every heart. Dr. Lin checked Chen's monitor again. Marat stood at the medical bay door, her eyes red with sleepless worry. She watched as medics worked to bring the child's fever down. Her hands shook whenever an alarm sounded. Dr. Lin placed a gentle hand on her shoulder and spoke soft words of hope. The translator repeated them clearly, down in engineering. Technician Morales inspected the refugee ship's failing reactor. Valves hissed, and sparks flew from a cracked conduit. Without urgent repairs, the ship would drift powerless again. Morales sent a status report to Captain Reyes. Reactor integrity. At 20%, repairs needed 30 minutes or life support would end. Captain Reyes turned to Commander Patel and spoke with quiet urgency. "Send engineer teams now," he said. "Can we splice our power lines to theirs?" The plan was risky, but the only way to heal the reactor. In the tech bay, human engineers and refugee technicians worked side by side. Their tools clanged as they cut and linked power conduits. Sweat dripped onto metal floors. Outside, the hunter ships reappeared on long-range scanners. Their formation was tighter and their intent clear. They fired a warning volley that struck the Meridian shields like a thunderclap. The bridge shook and red lights flashed. Weapons officers returned fire with stun beams. The hunters veered away at once. Their attack but a test of will, back in the medical bay. The child's eyes fluttered closed. Dr. Lin injected a slow-acting medicine to steady Chen's fever. Marat knelt by the cot and held his hand. Tears flowed as she whispered prayers. In her tongue, the translator echoed her vow to protect her child no matter the cost. In engineering, sparks flew as the power splice completed. Every hand held their breath until lights surged through the refugee ship's circuits. Alarms for reactor pressure fell silent. Life support fans hummed steadily again. Technician Morales grinned and gave a thumbs up on the feed. Captain Reyes nodded in relief and spoke into comms. Refugee ship power restored. His voice carried pride. Marat wiped tears and bowed her head in deep thanks. Her broken words came through. "You saved our home." The translator repeated. The crew felt their courage strengthen. Outside, the hunters paused at the nebula's edge. Sensors showed them scanning for life signs. The ghost shields around the refugee ship still glowed faintly. Commander Patel aimed a final, non-lethal warning shot to keep them at bay. The beam arced and struck harmlessly, yet firmly. The hunters withdrew a little further. On the bridge, Captain Reyes looked at his crew with quiet pride and said, "We bought them time." He tapped a small button and set course for a safe system. Behind him, the mother and child shared a soft smile. Hope glowed in their eyes again. Mercy had stood fast under siege, and they would not forget it. In the refugee ship's main corridor, lights flickered as engineers moved through dusty halls. Panels blazed with new power and fans hummed steadily. Refugees huddled in cradles and quiet rooms. Whispers of the rescue spread like wind through the ship. Each soul felt the change from despair to hope. Mara closed her eyes and recalled her planet's sunrise. The coral fields that once glowed pink under twin suns. The laughter of her people before the dark fleet came. She breathed deeply, as if tasting that lost world. Tears fell softly, yet carried a promise. They would survive and rebuild. In the docking bay, Marines stood guard beside loading ramps, their boots firm on metal floors, each weapon checked and rechecked. They formed a silent wall of safety for the refugees as they boarded. Every soldier understood their role in this fragile moment of mercy. Now both ships moved as one, toward a distant station. Battered but alive, every soul on board felt the weight of what they had done and what they had saved. The stars ahead shone bright with promise. The siege of mercy had ended, but a new journey for hope had just begun. The silent vow, the Meridian, glided through space with calm engines. Its hull dimmed to reduce detection, but inside, every system was alert. Red lines blinked quietly on the long-range scanners, showing that the hunter ships had not given up. They followed at a distance, waiting for the next moment to strike. Captain Reyes stood on the bridge, arms crossed behind his back, watching the small green dot of the refugee ship trailing just behind them. It now ran on shared power. Its system stable, the child was healing. The mother was safe, but the danger still lingered like a shadow. Lieutenant Chen walked over with a quiet update. They're not gaining speed, but they're matching our course, she said. They're waiting for us to make a mistake. Captain Reyes nodded slowly. Or they're waiting for backup, down in the medical bay. John sat up for the first time in hours. His cheeks had more color now, and his eyes sparkled with curiosity. He reached for a small holographic toy projected by the medical table. A floating star that twinkled as he touched it. Marat sat beside him, tears on her cheeks. But this time they were tears of relief. Dr. Lin checked the monitors and smiled. His fever is down and his oxygen levels are rising, she said. Marat turned and bowed her head, speaking soft words that the translator captured. You gave him back his breath when I had nothing left. Her voice was full of quiet gratitude. Meanwhile, in the Meridian's tech bay, Engineer Song worked on the jump drive cooling system. The last jump had stressed it badly, and the next might be their last if repairs weren't made. She and her team crawled inside narrow tubes, tightening seals and recalibrating conduits. Her voice echoed in the coms. We can give you one more good jump, Captain, after that. It's anyone's guess. Captain Reyes acknowledged the report. Then one jump is all we'll need, he said. We'll find the station and get these people to safety. He turned to Patel and said, plot a new course to avoid the hunters. Projected path, the commander nodded and tapped on the screen. But before the course could be locked in, the lights on the bridge flickered. And an alert flashed red across every panel. Incoming transmission, Chen said quickly. But it's not from the hunters. Everyone froze. Captain Reyes narrowed his eyes. From where? Chen played the message on the speaker, and a strange, broken voice came through. Ancient and distant, to the ones who shield the hunted. Your actions are watched, static, buzzed. You carry a seed of peace. Do not let it die. The signal ended as suddenly as it had started. The bridge fell silent. Crew exchanging confused looks. Was that a warning? Patel asked. Or a blessing? Reyes shook his head slowly. I don't know. But someone else is watching this war, back in the refugee ship. Marat felt something deep in her chest, a quiet sense that her people were not as alone as they believed. She stood and looked through the small, circular window at the stars, ahead, and at the human warship that now protected her child. Her people, her future. She pressed a small charm against the glass. A simple stone with the mark of her ancestors. She whispered words that even the translator didn't attempt to decode. Not all vows were meant to be translated. Some were only meant to be felt. Meanwhile, the hunter ships began to move again. Two broke off to try and flank the Meridian. Patel sounded the alert, and Reyes responded instantly. Prepare to shift position. Put us between the flanking ships and the refugee vessel. The engines fired, and the Meridian twisted through space like a silent sword. Shields up, weapons not yet firing. But the message was clear: any strike on the refugees would go through them first. The hunters held back once again, measuring the humans' resolve. Jun watched from the medical bay screen as the human ship blocked the path between the stars and danger. He didn't understand the tactics or the weapons, but he saw what mattered. He saw bravery in metal and fire. Mara held her child close and whispered, "They will not run." The translator didn't say anything, but it didn't need to in the silence of the bridge. Captain Reyes gave one final order for the night. Maintain this formation until we reach the station. He looked around at his crew, all still standing, all still ready, and said, "We." Are there a shield now? No one spoke, but everyone understood. No medals would be given. Number songs would be sung, but somewhere far from Earth. A human warship stood silent between hope and ruin. And a vow had been made in that silence, one that no enemy would break. And as the Meridian continued on, her hull lit by distant stars and the soft glow of nebula dust, Marat and Jun closed. Their eyes at last, not in fear, but in peace, they were still hunted. Yes, but they were no longer alone, and that changed everything.